Поверь, о товарищи, все по местам, последний парад наступает. Врагу не сдается наш гордый варяг, пощады никто.
The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 was a military conflict between Japan and Russia, in which a victorious Japan forced Russia to abandon its expansionist policy in East Asia. The war signified to the European powers that Japan was no longer an agrarian and isolationist feudal society, but a modernized and militarized force, capable of defeating Russia in open battle. In this video, we will be looking at the causes, the practice, and the effects of the Russo-Japanese War. The war developed from Russia and Japan's rivalry for dominance in Manchuria and Korea. Both empires saw their opportunities arise as the Great Qing was slowly collapsing. The Qing dynasty had been on a steady decline the last 100 years, which was made evident to the great powers after the loss of Taiwan and Korea in the Sino-Japanese War, and loss of multiple other territories to European powers. With Russia feeling encroached by the sudden expansion of the Japanese Empire, it signed an alliance with China against Japan, guaranteeing the integrity of Chinese territory. The terms of the alliance was that Russia obtained the right to lay the eastern section of the Trans-Siberian Railway across Manchuria, and to administer and patrol with Russian troops a strip of territory on either side of the railway. This treaty did not only further tensions between Japan and Russia, but inadvertently began an era of rivalry between the major powers in East Asia. The rivalry between Japan and Russia culminated into a conflict when diplomatic channels broke down in February 1904 and the Japanese subsequently launched an attack with no prior warning on Port Arthur February 8th. The Russo-Japanese War was a regional war between two major powers in the name of interests and prestige. Initially, the Russians only had approximately 80,000 troops garrisoned in East Asia, while the Japanese had around 200,000 well-trained and motivated troops. However, the Russians had over 1 million troops during peacetime that were stationed in Europe. The Japanese strategy counted on the inability of the Trans-Siberian Railway to adequately transport troops from Europe to the Far East to ensure Japanese supremacy in Asia. The Japanese encountered much stiffer resistance on land, but crushed Russia on the sea. This was most apparent in the Battle of Tsushima and the Battle of Port Arthur when the Russian navy was decisively destroyed. The war reached a climax in the Battle of Mukden, with exceptionally high casualty rates on both sides. Not being able to pursue an effective land war anymore, the Battle of Tsushima and unrest in Russia became the salvation for Japan. The Russians suffered one defeat after another. Public support had deteriorated, and Tsar Nicholas II had to deal with the consequences of Bloody Sunday on the home front. The Russians finally sued for peace on September 5, 1905. A peace conference was held at Portsmouth with Theodore Roosevelt as a mediator. The Russians were forced to cede Port Arthur and South Sakhalin to the Japanese. The Treaty of Portsmouth ended Russia's expansionist policies in East Asia, which was but a small part of its wider goal to establish hegemony over the entirety of Asia. Moreover, Russia's defeat against a previously isolationist and feudal society only served to add more salt to the wound. Within only 2 months of the treaty, revolution brought Russia to her knees when Nicholas II was forced to ostensibly transform Russia from an unlimited autocracy to a semi-constitutional monarchy. The war also sharpened the impact of economic recession gripping Russia. At the same time, the military budget was increased by 50%, exacerbating discontent among workers. Japan, for its part, formalized its hold on Korea in 1907, when the final monarch of the Yi dynasty was forced to abdicate. Korean culture and language was from there on out violently suppressed, and Korea was formally annexed by Japan in 1910. the Japanese military found itself with greatly increased power both domestically and internationally. By the outbreak of World War I, Japan was treated as a fully equal Allied power. World War I solidified Japan's status as the sole military and imperialist power in East Asia. To conclude, the Russo-Japanese War was an integral part of setting the stage for the conflicts in the 20th century. It established Japan's position as an imperial power and the subsequent Second Sino-Japanese War and the Pacific theater of World War II, which would come to have profound effects on society today. The war also exposed Russia's growing military weakness in a world where industrialization and technological development was paramount and Victorian military tactics no longer applied, which heightened discontent among Russian workers.